Hi again, everyone. Here we are in the Ides of April, as they say. Welcome to UnAnchoredBoston.com with Bob Lobel. I'm Mike Lynch, and as always, we're brought to you by Cold Springs RV, your destination for all things camping in Ware, New Hampshire, of course, and by the great George Gray. At George Gray's Lexington Toyota, 409 Mass Ave in Lexington, Big Wheel we call him. And they're getting ready for a big 250th anniversary in Lexington, and I'm sure George Gray is going to be right in the middle of it. Well, we're going to be right in the middle of a lot of stuff right here. There's a lot of stuff to talk about with the NFL, the Patriots, Belichick's new book, Bob Kraft, you name it, Mike Vrabel. And as always, we have the great Karen Guregian here with us. And to formally introduce Karen is the great Bob Lobel.
Well, Chelmsford and Mass lied, but I'll tell you this. I love Karen and for so many reasons, and she knows it. But she covered 6 Masters, okay? So think about this. I mean, you got it right. 6 times she's been in Augusta to cover the Masters. And I don't see how, Lynch, we could go one step further without talking about that event from yesterday.
Actually, it might be more, but I lost count.
That's amazing,
Really?
Karen. During the Tiger Run, yeah, I was there.
Wow, because you know provincial we are here in TV and newspapers. If there's not a local angle, okay, we'll save a few bucks to not go to this event and go to the next one. I'm extremely happy for you. I've never been.
No, you're extremely jealous, is what you are.
Tell us, we're jealous. Tell us all about it.
Well, it's like it's better than what you see. I mean, if that's even possible.
Wow.
There's nothing like walking the grounds during the 4 days, but especially the last day. And again, when I covered it, it was Tiger pretty much in his prime, and he could be on the 10th hole, and I could be out on the 15th hole. And when he did something, it just reverberated all throughout. You could hear, you knew the roar, like you knew from wherever you were, if you heard a certain roar, it was a Tiger roar. And it was fun. The one thing, they're very strict there. There was during the par 3 competition, Drew Bledsoe was caddying for somebody. Okay, I don't even remember who, but the guy won the par 3 tournament. And I'm desperately trying to find Bledsoe, and somebody said, "Oh, he just headed out to the parking lot." So I got to get him. So I start running, and they almost threw me in Masters jail. Like, you're not supposed to, walk. I did get him, but they're very old school with their policies, and you must, and no cell phones allowed, or leave your cell phone at the media center. Do not bring it out on the course. And it's the one tournament that I've covered that they don't let the media under the ropes, so you can avoid the crowd.
Can you imagine what it would have been like being there yesterday? Seriously, was that about the greatest sporting event you've seen?
It was the best exorcism I've ever seen. Yes. It was like the Rory McIlroy, the 2 Rorys were fighting each other, and it was like an exorcism. Good Rory would be out, and then bad, evil Rory.
So good, Karen. That's such a great way of putting it.
But the good Rory prevailed. So that was fun. But the theater around them, I love Justin Rose. The one U.S. Open I covered in Marion, he won. And he's just such a class act and a gentleman, and very insightful. I mean, you don't really get to know these guys or talk to them until you get them in during the week for the media interviews. And I was, constantly fascinated by some of these players just by listening to them offer their thoughts about the game or this or that or Tiger or, at the time, all we'd ask about is Tiger, pretty much. But I do remember the reverence all the golfers had for Tiger. And even after, when he was struggling or whatever, and in their minds, there'll never be anyone like him or as dominant. He was dominant for a decade. And to hear the players tell it, they know what it's like to try and get up every week to week to week to week to week to week and try to win. Tiger just won every week. I mean, he was that dominant or any tournament he went into, he was expected to win and usually delivered over the course of a 10-year period. And to have players put that in perspective from their experience, trying to get up every single week, trying to win a major every time it came around, that kind of dominance, for them anyway. I mean, it's like Tiger was exalted in their minds, and rightfully so.
Karen, I've never been to Augusta. The consistent reaction I get from everybody I talk to is that TV does not really do the justice to the swinging elevations, the hills, up hills, down hills. It looks like a relatively flat course with a couple of, inclines and declines, but I guess it's apparently very hilly, right?
I was watching with somebody, and he was saying, it looks flat to me, and I just sort of laughed. And it's like, that is the least flat course, the least flat greens that you'll ever see. And I mean, I think you notice it when you see these on the putting greens. They start out like 10, 15 yards to the left.
Yeah.
To have it curl around, or just some of the odd, you see where the ball lands and you go, oh, that doesn't have a prayer of getting close. And yet it got close.
Yeah.
You know what? They did a demonstration of 3D television at Rose Wharf One Masters. And it was a great concept, but you could really see on 3D television, as you guys were talking about, the amazing, the elevations, not just the green undulations, but walking, you couldn't tell you're walking up to a green, but you're really walking up to a green. I mean, it's like going up the 18th is really up the 18th.
Yep. I mean, when Tiger came back from whatever, I think it was, that course was the hardest for him not to play, but to walk.
Right.
Because of all the hills and it is. It's, you go up and down and down and up and up and down, and there is little flatness to it. But again, the setting of it, the Amen corner, the azaleas and the color is so vibrant.
Can you imagine hitting a shot under that pressure, Karen? I mean, you're an excellent golfer. I've seen Lynch.
No, I was, but yes.
And can you imagine playing golf under those conditions and those circumstances?
No, and that's why, I mean, as I said, Rory's evil twin kept showing up, and it wasn't like once. It was like every other hole. It was like, what was that shot? And then he'd come back the next hole, and then you're going, what was that shot? Because it was like blowing your mind, amazing, like something only he could do. I think it was Ben Crenshaw talking about, the couple of balls he was behind trees.
Yeah.
And somehow he crushed it and would get it on the green. Most people would try and just hit a line drive
Yeah.
The opening,
Yeah.
not Rory. He somehow got it up and over above the trees
Yeah.
every single time. And that is not, even the pros would tell you to have the guts to do that, because chances are you're going to hit a limb. Nope, not Rory. So you saw his greatness, right, on display, and then he couldn't make a 2.5-foot putt to win.
I know.
You know, or he couldn't pitch it. He pitched it into the drink. I mean, what was that? I call it the evil Rory, the exorcism.
Oh, it was great. That's a great analogy.
Yeah.
Has a great picture right there. You can just feel the everybody knew what was going through his head and his heart in that picture right there.
Yeah. It's like he was having an internal war with himself, like knowing he could do it, but fighting off whatever that is that happens to people in big moments and not quite being able to handle it. And yet for somebody like him, it's not like he hadn't won. He's won a ton of majors. He just hadn't won this one. And I mean, we saw it with Greg Norman, right? Gagging down the stretch of the Masters, blowing a huge lead. You see kind of the human frailty in these athletes that we revere. And what that tells you is they're just like you and I in some ways. Because
oh sure,
when you're pressed up in those big moments, do you deliver, or does that inner demon come through when you kind of blow it?
You know, CBS they call it a tease. Usually it's run at the top of the show, but this one was run about a half hour, 40 minutes in. And who was it? John Legend, the great composer.
Yeah.
And the title of it was Nerves. And, you know, all I could think about, they played that around 2:30, 2:40 in the afternoon. And from 5 to 7, we saw at least a half a dozen or more examples of nerves from a myriad of players.
Sure. Yeah. You know, the best analogy I can give you and again, a regular person like me, and it wasn't on a golf course. I happen to be a pianist. I play the piano, and I played in competitions, but I also, performed in front of people in recitals. And I hated doing it. I mean, I enjoyed playing the piano, but I hated playing in front of people because I got nervous. And I never thought I was giving them the best of me because I would tense up and play nervous. Well, one time, again, you try all these tricks not to be nervous. And I'm up there on the stage playing, and I'm going, oh, this is great. I'm feeling good. And then all of a sudden, my left leg started doing this, up and down. And I could not stop my leg from doing this. And it's like I had zero control. It's like the nerves went to the leg. And I'm like hitting it and playing, and I'm hitting it, and I stop. Well, I stopped playing after that. I mean, in front of people, because that just freaked me out. I was an athlete, though, way back when. I played sports. I never had that feeling, but I did. I did one time performing in front of people playing the piano. I had zero control over my leg. It was weird.
Do you have a piano handy right now? You want to play for us?
Yeah, I do have a piano handy, but it's in another room.
Well, you could play in front of. Let's see if you get nervous playing in front of Lobel and Lynch.
Well, I wouldn't. Way back in the day when I covered the Bruins, I used to travel with former Globe writer named Fran Rosa, the late Fran Rosa.
Yep.
And you both probably knew him. And he was like a mentor to me in a lot of ways because, again, my very first beat, he would always make sure that, I was okay. And, but when he found out that I played the piano, we'd be out on the road and, you write late after a game and we're heading back to the hotel. It's 1 or 2 in the morning and he'd scout out the hotels for pianos. They have pianos in different floors. And Fran would get a free concert like at 2 in the morning.
Well, maybe Bob Kraft will ask you to play the piano when Parcells gets inducted into the Patriots Hall of Fame.
No, I don't think so. I don't think so.
One more thing before we let go of the Masters. I look at the menu, the egg salad sandwiches, $1.50, and it hasn't changed in years, right?
I haven't been there in a while, so I don't know. I don't know if the prices have changed or not.
Do you get to come in Magnolia Lane or some other gate?
Some other gate, but I mean, I get to go in the clubhouse, so you get to see Magnolia Lane. So, but it's quite the place. And I see so much when people coming into the gates for their first time. You do see it's like people have gone to heaven. It's like something on their bucket list, and they finally get to experience it. And there's like the joy of people when they on their first Masters trip, coming to the gates, getting to be on or around the course. It is special. I have to say.
I thought CBS did a really great job. I love when they showed the scoreboard changing, things that you hadn't seen before. Plus, they kept pointing out those guys that had won the Grand Slam. And you say, well, where's Arnold Palmer? And of course, he never won the Grand Slam. I mean, people didn't. I don't think anybody realized that he didn't win the PGA. That was, everything else. He was such a great player, but he just never won a Grand Slam.
Yeah. But you go down the list, and it is a very special list. And the reason why it is such an awesome accomplishment, each of those majors is different. It's not. I mean, when you're talking about the British Open, it's all you're dealing with links courses and you're dealing with weather and winds. It's a whole different game or strategy. The Masters, again, because of all the hills and the length and the crazy greens, that's a whole nother test.
Plus, it's on the same course every year. It's the
right.
It's the one major that's on the same course every year.
Right. The U.S. Open it's the rough. I mean, they don't want you to score they don't want scores 10 under, 15 under, or whatever it is. And it usually isn't, because those courses are really penal and really tough. The PGA, again, that moves around. And it just depends on the difficulty of the course. But I think the one everyone's glued to on Sunday is the Masters, no matter what.
They have like Fenway and Wrigley, they have the old-fashioned scoreboards, which are done by hand. There are no electronic scoreboards, and there are no cell phones allowed on the course. So the players is out of touch with what's going on another hole as we are. Is that right, Karen? So like you hear a roar, but you got to wait till they change. So they don't know what really happened, right?
Right. And there's only you have smaller scoreboards, and there's only, I don't know, a handful of those big scoreboards where you see the whole deal. and trust me, the players know where to look for them, or know when to look. So they'll figure out what the roar was. Although, as I said, when Tiger was there, you kind of knew. You kind of knew when he was doing something.
Okay, we're going to switch to Parcells and Kraft right now. I know it's a little.
You mean that was another exorcism too, no?
Yes, it was.
Well, we'll keep with the exorcism theme. Look at that.
Look at that, huh?
Two guys really having a good time.
Yeah, we got a lot to talk about with this, Karen. So let's start it off, Bobby.
Well, I was just interested in Karen's perception of why Kraft, what the motivation was for Robert to,
As a contributor.
acquiesce and have Parcells
Oh,
finally.
I think, yeah.
You guys are on the committee. Both you guys are on the nominating committee.
Yep.
I haven't been there in a couple of years, but I am still on it.
But it doesn't matter. You don't have to show up. He's going to put in who he wants to anyway.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we got him on the ballot 5 times or whatever it was, and 5 times the fans didn't vote him in.
Do you believe that?
Yeah, I mean, in some of the cases, I mean, he went up against really popular players. And who's going to go in, the popular player or the coach? So there might have been one time where it seemed, gee, you would have thought he would have gotten in. But you can think the owner didn't want him in, or you could, and they fixed it. Or you could think that the fans who were voting were either of this age and had no real concept of what Parcells did or his importance and significance, or the voters were from that time period and just wouldn't forgive him for how he departed. So, I mean, I can give you a case for all of those things, but it seemed pretty obvious that the fans he wasn't going to get a fan vote. And I don't even think he ever finished second in the fan voting. He was always like third. So either the fans really held a grudge, or again, the fans of today just don't, have a true understanding of what the team was back then and Parcells' significance and basically starting the turnaround, both with his coaching and his drafting as well of certain players. So that being said, Robert Kraft could have gotten him in sooner with his contributor thing, with his power to put in a contributor. But I think both men will admit they haven't had the best relationship, and understandably so. Parcells wanted to shop for the groceries, and at that time, Kraft said, no, you have to take Harry Glenn, not the guy you want. The way Parcells basically conspired during the Super Bowl that they were in to go to the Jets. So it's been tough for those two to.
Well, Karen, what about the theory that Parcells? That Kraft says, okay, I did it with my Hall of Fame. Why can't the NFL do it with your Hall of Fame?
Well,
what about that theory?
Well, I think all theories apply, Bob. But I did talk to Parcells the day Robert told everyone. And Parcells chalked it up as to 2 old guys basically saying, we're too old for this. And we're too old to keep carrying these harboring these ill feelings. And I think Kraft extended an olive branch, and Parcells was willing to accept the olive branch. Again, they're both 84. So, and I think, I think it would have been a shame if Parcells was inducted posthumously. By the same token, I think it would be a shame if Robert Kraft eventually gets into the Pro Football Hall of Fame and it's posthumous. So, people are going to think what they want. They're going to think there's all these motivations behind all these moves. And maybe there's some reason to it. Maybe there's some substance to those theories. But I think in the end result, the right thing happened for whatever reason.
Karen, does it bother? For some reason, the word contributor next to Bill Parcells or Dante Scarnecchia really kind of bothers me. It's like, okay, they were part of the team, but they were like the team manager, or they were like a loyal fan. And why can't Bill Parcells go in as head coach? Why can't Dante Scarnecchia go in as a longtime assistant coach?
Well, assistant coaches aren't
Yeah, they never nominated.
Head coaches are, but again, if you're, it's something that the people who made this Hall of Fame into existence and the people who set the rules kind of have to come to grips with. So, I mean, yeah, Parcells is going in and Dante's in there. Their head cheerleading coach posthumously is in there. So it seems like he should have another category. But, the other interesting one will be Belichick.
Yeah. Does his five,
It's a while.
It's 4 years out of the NFL, or like if he's coaching college that he's still active?
Yeah, that's a good question. Yeah. I'm not sure. I think they're going to wait because I think they know he wants to get back into coaching in the NFL. So,
What about his book? Now that he all the contributors, he thanked everybody, including his muse, but Robert Kraft.
Yeah, well, that relationship is even more frosty than Parcells and Kraft. So, Parcells and Kraft seem like best buddies compared to Kraft and Belichick.
How about the title of the book, The Art of Winning? And the book that he subscribes to a lot when he was coaching was the Art of War from Sun Tzu, I think is how you pronounce it, and it's constantly brought up. But
and we all bought that book way back when. We
never,
copy of that book.
We never heard of it before the Patriots coach was using it, about every battle won before it was ever fought. But just the 3 words, Art of War. And then Belichick's title is Art of Winning.
Yeah.
That's not, I don't think it's a coincidence, do you?
It's not. It's the same principles. But you have to understand, Belichick is this, along with football, was a huge, still is probably, historian of wars, of battles. And again, he would take principles from the great generals of all time and apply them to football. And that thing of readiness and preparedness was big with him. And again, generals in wars will tell you you have to be ready for what X, Y, and Z. Well, Belichick would have the team ready for X, Y, and Z, and then some. If this happens, you do this. If this happens, you do that. I mean, it was constant situations. And he drilled them and schooled them. And lots of times the players thought they were wasting their time. And then guess what? That situation came up in the game and they knew what to do.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, Belichick, again, loved, a big historian, especially with wars and generals and strategies. And he's applied a lot of that to the football field. And I haven't even read the book.
I used to ask him, I said, do you ever feel like you've won a game on Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday? And he said, absolutely.
Yeah.
He says, but I've also, the converse is true. I've walked on the field at 1:00 on Sunday afternoon, and I had no idea what to expect. And but he always said this to me though. He says, remember this, Mike. He says, the price for success is always paid in advance. And he'd wink and he just nod his head like that. The price for success is always paid in advance. And I'm thinking about it and I'm saying, okay, that's what you were just talking about, Karen, all the situational things that come up, that's paid in advance. And he was very good at that.
Yeah. I mean, that's part of really there it is.
Great graphic by Jim Burke. Jim, great job.
Yeah.
But
that was, again, part of what made Belichick such a great coach. I know everyone nowadays thinks it was Tom Brady, but I'm sorry, Belichick was a great coach, a great strategist when it came to stopping the other team's quarterback.
Yeah, he was Napoleonic.
Brady had nothing to do with like shutting down the greatest show on turf,
right?
Or the other Rams team in 2018. So, Belichick, again, he left no stone unturned. And again, I know these things not just from watching, but just from talking to players as well. And how he'd school them on all these things that might have seemed ridiculous or a little extreme at the time, but then it would show up in a game and they were like, So and they always, the other part of it was when the players showed up on Sunday, they felt prepared. They felt like they were prepared enough that they would win the game. And having that psychologically is another important thing. Or they felt they had an advantage with Belichick standing on the sideline.
Yeah.
Well, go ahead. I was going to do my Cold Springs RV, but go ahead, Mike.
No, you go ahead, Bob. I forget what I was going to say anyway.
Well, it must have been important. I think while I do this Cold Springs RV reminder, I want to remind Jim Burke that I just sent him my favorite Belichick picture. So maybe he'll get it up online. So you'll see it. If he can do it, then you'll see it.
Is it recent?
Well, I think it is. Well, and that's a pretty good question. It's not that recent.
Okay. Like we're not going to see him on the beach.
On the porch of the.
Oh, that.
Yeah, that's
Napoleon. Very good. Yep.
Okay, that's my.
Oh yeah, so that your second.
Looking like he's really happy to be with you, Karen.
Yeah. That disgusted look.
What's his orange juice? Is that the breakfast meeting at the owners meeting?
Yeah. It was.
Usually he has orange juice there. He's sipping orange juice.
Yeah, okay. But notice how he keeps his enemies close. I'll sit right next to him.
That's very good. Why did you picture yourself as his enemy, or did he picture you as the
Oh,
enemy?
he definitely pictured me as an enemy.
What, you specifically, or as the press in
No,
general?
media in general. But then the degree ramped up depending on what you wrote.
Okay, all right. Let me talk a little bit about Cold Springs RV because the new 2025 RVs are in, and I can tell you, just coming back from South Carolina, the RVs are all over the place. I mean, this seems to be America's most popular sport is going out and camping, especially coming up in this time of the year. So next year's models are in and they're arriving daily. And you can check out the latest in pop-ups and travel trailers and fifth wheelers and motorhomes. You see this little thing behind me, this Olympic torch. The guy that put it together was that guy Phil that I talk about having in a campers, having a Cold Springs RV camper in Raymond, New Hampshire, and then
Yep.
the way he met his girlfriend is she had her own Cold Springs RV camper, and they parked next to each other, and at least one of them didn't leave in the middle of the night, and it all worked out. So that's a special gift. So tell him Lobel and Lynch sent you in Cold Springs RV. The doors are always open, and Karen's going to get the question from Mike that she's had before, and she may have changed her mind now that Rory McIlroy.
I always change my mind.
Okay. Let me just right. Okay, let me finish this because this is why we're here. Or if it wasn't for them, we wouldn't be here because we've taken campers to get here. Go in, freely browse. They're always open. The latest in camping, Cold Springs RV. Where, New Hampshire, which is west of Goffstown, north of Chelmsford and Tingsboro. Okay, it is. It's right up there in New Hampshire.
In my neck of the woods. My neck of the woods.
You get it. I'll be coming up, Karen, by the way, for another Notre Dame Academy golf tournament at Vesper.
Oh, nice.
May 5th. So I expect to see you there.
May 5th.
Oh,
It's a Monday.
Right.
Friday night, I was at some place getting a couple sliders and in Naples down here, and so I was walking out, and I told the manager, I said, "Hey, that so and so Daniel's a great server, great kid. This was only his third day on the job, blah blah blah." And he says, "You look familiar. Where are you from?" I said, I'm from Boston." He said, "Oh, I'm from Chelmsford." I said, "Oh. You know Karen Guregian?" Yeah. There's we had all these writers: Sean McAdam, Jerry Callahan. We had all these people. So your name came up. And, yeah, imagine that. All right, so here we go with the question. Now, if you've listened to us for the first time, we always give our guests use of our Lobel Lynchy cruiser. Once it's built, it's going to be even 10 times better than the Madden cruiser. The only thing is, our guest, Karen, this week, has to pick someone to ride shotgun with her cross country. We'll fly you back. And this trip, Karen, you have to pick a Masters champion, past, present, alive, or deceased, to ride 5, 6, 7 days with you cross country shotgun. Some Masters champion that you'd like to have a conversation with.
Well, I mean, the easy thing would be McIlroy now, but
okay.
I all his faults aside, I would love to ride with Tiger, and because it's so hard to when it comes to somebody like that, the persona you see, the persona he presents. It's like you don't know, is that the real Tiger, or is he really a different cat or a different character? You'd like to get him alone in a relaxed setting, just to hear him talk about, growing up a prodigy, that whole 9 yards, delivering. Now having a son, who's, trying to follow in his father's footsteps. There's just so many interesting dynamics to Tiger Woods. And again, if I could go behind the curtain, so to speak, about all the things that have happened in his life, and what it was that he had all those years uh, of believing every time he set foot on the golf course he was going to win, and usually delivered, and what that was like to now being kind of a shell of what he was, and how hard that is to kind of come to grips with. Not walking to the tee and looking across to the opponent, and basically that look basically burying the opponent. He doesn't have that anymore. I saw it firsthand. TPC Boston, when he was here playing in the final round, and I was at the first tee, and him and VGC were in the last group, and they get up on the tee, they shake hands or whatever, and Tiger literally looked at him and looked through him. And that look, you could almost see, like VJ was like, uh-oh. VJ, who's one of the most accurate, straightest drivers, like hit it into the woods on the first tee. And I said, Tiger basically had him at hello on that tee.
Yeah.
But that was the aura and the power that he had, is that he would beat somebody just by standing next to them. And because he had all this history of backing up his bravado, right? It took a long time before somebody felt, I can beat him, and weren't defeated before they stepped on the tee.
Karen, let me ask you this as a journalist, and you're sitting there with Tiger Woods. Would you ask him the question of what's the secret of your greatness, or what are your biggest regrets?
All of those things, Bob. I mean, we're on a long ride, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, I'll ask him about everything.
What would interest you most, the secret of greatness or his most biggest regrets?
Probably regrets. I mean, the secret of his greatness is he was great. I mean, the part about that, again, it would be fascinating, is that how he was able to, again, maintain that greatness for so long. Because, again, that's the thing all of his peers talk about. It's not that you can win a tournament here and there, over the course of a season, but Tiger's like beating everybody's brains in for a decade. and that to them is the most incredible thing about him. How every week he could get up for the event, how each week he was on, right? All these other athletes would say, yeah, I would be great this one week, and the next week I didn't have it or lost it, and it was just so hard to maintain and sustain a level, whereas Tiger had that level for about a decade. And that is the thing that impresses, astounds, and basically has, his peers respect for that period of time that he was able to step on a course week after week after week and dominate.
Well, go ahead, Lynchy. I'm just going to say all three teams win yesterday, which is kind of in a rare one-day appearance when all three of your local teams win, especially with the Bruins and the Red Sox in that full. But I would simply say it's still dominated by the NFL. I don't care. You can say what you want, but anybody is just always talking about now the NFL and the draft. And I want to make sure we get all these things in, because it's a very busy time. We got this is marathon leading up to the marathon. And, we got 100 stories there. But the NFL draft is in 2 weeks. And that's all anybody can talk about is the NFL draft. And all 3 teams win yesterday. Nobody cares. So I'm just saying the dominance of the NFL, which is your primary beat right now, Karen, is it's amazing, really.
Yeah, the interest. I mean, they have I don't want to say everyone hooked, but there is huge interest. And again, I know some of that has to do with betting. It's like the easiest sport to bet on week to week to week. But I mean, there's compelling characters, and for a while, for almost 2 decades, it was Tom Brady, Bill Belichick, and the Patriots, and whatever teams that they had over the course of 2 decades. And they kept interest, whether initially they were the darlings, the Cinderella team that upset the greatest show on turf, to turning into the most hated team in America with Darth Vader as their head coach. But again, it was fascinating. Either you were rooting hard for them early on because they were a good story, or you were rooting passionately against them because you thought they were evil. So, but now it's kind of, the baton has been passed to the Kansas City Chiefs. You have another really special all-world quarterback. They're threatening Patriot records. They've won and won and won, and now it's kind of starting to flip the other way. The teams don't want them to win so much. So it's a storyline. It's the storyline. It's the characters involved. It's the personalities involved, and of course, it's the betting line as well.
You know what the question I was going to ask you before we went to the Cold Springs RV. One line by Belichick on the book: "Patriots way does not exist." He debunked that. He slam dunked it and swept it right off the table.
But I wonder if it said if it was instead the Belichick way, if he would sweep that away too.
That's a good question.
Right?
Yeah. But not one mention of Robert Kraft in the entire book.
Right, because they're not fond of each other, and they haven't been fond of each other for a very long time.
Yeah, but look what Kraft did too in the Dynasty. It was a year ago when the Dynasty came out, and Belichick said, I was roasted in that Dynasty. I don't need to be roasted.
Right. So these men like to be petty, and they like to get back at their enemies. And not one thing surprises me. Whether I would have been surprised if Kraft's name was in the book. How's that? Again, based on this tit for tat stuff that goes on, with these people.
Did you come out with a mock draft, Karen? Because everybody else seems to have one.
Yeah, they have another one going tomorrow.
Yeah, well, what do you think's happening in the 4th round? I mean, the 4th pick.
Well, I see the first one I put out, I had them taking a defensive tackle from Michigan, Mason Graham. This one, I'll ruin the suspense. I have them taking left tackle Will Campbell of LSU, he of the short arms. And I have one more coming out next week, and who knows who I'll have there.
Amazing.
Why did Robert Kraft waste a year in not hiring Mike Vrabel? Why do we have to go through the Gerard Mayo experience when Mike Vrabel was available and he's so excited?
It was written in Gerard Mayo's contract that he was going to succeed Bill. And Robert honored that. And again, I don't think he anticipated Mike Vrabel being fired from Tennessee and being available. But several years before, when it was actually the year before, Mayo was kind of a hot commodity, and he was interviewing for head coaching jobs left and right. And Robert felt he had to do something to keep him, but he also was mindful that Bill Belichick was coming toward the end, at least in Robert Kraft's mind. I think in Robert Kraft's mind, we'll let him get the record and then go off into the sunset, and we need, and he thought, well, Mayo can learn some more from him, and by the time Belichick is done in a couple of years, it'll be a natural succession. Only things really escalated with how bad the team was, how poorly Bill was drafting, how poorly he was putting the roster together, how he was having defensive coaches coach offense. It just got to the point where Robert, had to cut ties sooner than he anticipated. And since he had that little proviso written into Mayo's contract, that was the guy.
It was Butch Hobson revisited. That's the way I saw the whole thing.
Mm-hmm.
Very similar.
Well,
hot commodity. Got to get him now before somebody else takes him.
Exactly. But I think Robert also likes familiarity. Right? He likes to have some kind of sense of the coach. The one time he didn't, it was Pete Carroll, and that didn't turn out well, even though Pete Carroll turned out to be a pretty darn good coach, once he left New England. I think Robert Kraft sending a first-round pick to the Jets for Belichick was mostly out of what Kraft saw out of Belichick as an assistant for Bill Parcells. And again, it's familiarity, it's comfort. He knows what he's getting. And even though Belichick had not succeeded anywhere outside of being a defensive coordinator, I think Kraft thought, again, since he was with Parcells, learned from Parcells, he would bring those same things to the table, just as Mayo was coached by Belichick, learned from him, coached with him. So therefore, of course, he's going to be a great coach.
You remind me of, when you say bring up Pete Carroll, you remind me of one of Parcells' great quotes when the reporter from, I think it was Pawtucket or the Providence Journal, asked him, did you out coach the other guy? And Parcells says, what kind of a dumbass question was that? It was one of the great, and everybody thinks that, I got to buy the groceries, you got to cook the dinner. The quote was a great one, but what kind of a dumbass question was that? Was pretty good quote.
He would also be a great guy to take it on and have a camper trip with. Just for his stories, just for his humor, his wit. I've gotten to know him a little bit.
He is a funny guy. He's a really funny guy.
He is a funny guy. And as Jacoby Brissett will tell you, he's a softie too. He really is a softie. You wouldn't think that, but I mean, when he was the coach here, I don't want to say I was afraid of him, but it was like, I was waiting to get that. What a dumbass question that was. So you were always kind of on your toes, right? And, I enjoyed him for that reason, is that there was always get something that you could use and run with and whatever. Belichick, you got nothing. But Parcells, usually there was some snarky remark or something in there that you could really
Remember,
entertaining.
Diassi said that Matt Barr was sick one day, and his kicker, Diassi, went up to Parcells and says, "Matt's not feeling really well, coach." He said, "Well, tell him to get sick on his own time."
Yeah.
He
So,
just had a line for everything.
so later on in life, retired Belichick, Parcells, who I've had to call on occasion, is I don't have that fear of him saying, "Karen, now that was a dumbass question." He's actually really sweet and endearing almost.
Yeah.
And he is a softie because when Jacoby Brissett came back for his second time, I had written a story when Jacoby was drafted about how Parcells kind of was his secret private mentor. And, like his first love is going to the racetrack, but his second love is hanging around football fields and watching kids play in Florida. And he kept a keen eye on Jacoby Brissett because he thought Jacoby Brissett was going to be something. There was a couple other kids in there too. And Parcells became like a second father to Jacoby Brissett. And he tried to mentor him and guide him through, which college to go to and, so on. He was kind of overseeing Jacoby. And it made for a really nice story when they drafted him. Well, so he comes back and smart old me decides, I'm going to call Parcells again about this. And something happened that I would not have anticipated. in talking, like I had talked to Jacoby, and in talking about their relationship over the years, Parcells actually got choked up. Now I would never imagine this bigger than life, larger than life man getting choked up. But their relationship, Parcells has like 4 girls, right? And this is Jacoby's like the son he never had. And he speaks about Jacoby in a way a father would a son. I'm even getting choked up remembering our conversation and writing about it. But to get Parcells back to Parcells, so I wrote this big story in Mass Live, not in the newspaper, not in the Herald since I moved on. And I told Parcells the story was going to come out this day. It's going to be on Mass Live website, blah, 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 blah. So the story posts, I'm actually driving to Foxborough. My phone rings. And the man who was a week before choked up was barking in the phone, "Karen, I can't read this story. It's under a paywall." So he's like chewing me out because Mass Live had a paywall. And somehow that made him upset because he wanted to read the story. So I told him I would take care of it, and I did. They opened the paywall for Bill Parcells. So he could read the story. But anyway, the Parcells I've gotten to know over recent years is a wonderful, endearing man who also has all these million stories about this, that, and the other thing. So yeah, I'd take him on the camper too.
Yeah, he'd be a good one to have. He drove from when he got into the Patriots Hall of Fame. He drove from Jupiter, Florida, to Saratoga.
Yeah, Saratoga. Yeah.
Yeah, he was riding shotgun. Somebody else was driving, and I called him as well. I called him the day after Will McDonough died, and he couldn't even compose himself on the phone.
Yeah.
And I called him when Joe O'Donnell died, and it was the same thing. He said, "Mike, I just can't. I'm sorry. When I said, don't worry about it, Bill. You obviously cared about this guy a great deal, and
Yeah.
it was people will be stunned that he has a tear duct.
And boy, does he does.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
Yeah, but there's substance there that you wouldn't anticipate. Again, given his persona as a head coach. So again, that's why like these rides would be fascinating, and why Tiger would be fascinating to me, because again, these larger than life figures have a persona, and you would think that over a cross country trip, you could strip beneath that persona and really get to know the real Bill Parcells or the real Tiger Woods in that kind of a setting.
Karen, you did a great job today. I don't want to.
Hold up, Bob. I got to do one that George Gray.
I know it's important.
It is important because it's a big anniversary coming up in Lexington. Hey, if you're thinking about a new vehicle, go where Lobel and Lynch go. Go see our friend George Gray at George Gray's Lexington Toyota. We've been customers for years because we know that George Gray will treat you right. They're a family-owned and operated dealership that we trust, and you can trust as well. Trust me. Go see the great George Gray, the big wheel we call him, at George Gray's Lexington Toyota, 409 Mass Ave in Lexington. And they're in the middle of getting ready for a 250th anniversary of the
he's going to pretend
around
to
the
be Paul
world.
Revere. He's going to ride across in a Prius.
George, I think George should run. George might have been there at that 250. He might have been there at the.
He might have been, but he'll be riding that Prius from Lexington to Concord.
Hold on, we get a graphic of Karen with Tiger and.
Oh, look at that!
Wow!
Oh, wow! Look at that. You know who did that?
That's
good job,
cool.
Burke. Well, that's pretty good, Karen. You want that picture, right?
Oh, absolutely.
A1. Do that. Can you do that again, Jim?
Throw it up there again. Come on. That's pretty good.
That's pretty good.
Wow, I love it.
And you're in. It looks like you're in the RV.
Yes, totally.
Yeah, that's right.
You are in the RV.
Although Bill does not look amused. Bill does not look amused.
Well, he thought it was just going to be you and him chatting. He didn't want to share the stage with Tiger.
God, how's that possible? Good job, man. That's really great.
Well, before we end, I do think the Patriots will be better.
More than 4 wins?
Yes. Bet the house on it. Yeah.
I gotta look at the schedule.
The schedule's a layup.
Right, 6 to 7 wins.
Yeah,
but that's a little early for that. We're getting a little ahead of ourselves here.
We are, but there is excitement. But I've heard people say, "Oh, 12 wins." Now that is really getting carried away. 7 or 8 sounds good to me. And here's the more important thing. I think they'll be better to watch. They won't make as many mistakes. They won't look confused. I just think the product will be better because the coaching is going to be better. And I think they've upgraded the talent level a little bit, even though they still have a long way to go. But between the coaching and the elevation, especially players on defense, I think it'll be a better product to watch this coming season.
Well, I'm looking forward. There's nothing like football season, as Bob says. Football is king, and let's see how it goes. Mike Vrabel appears to be making good decisions. I like the people they pick up in free agencies and all the other acquisitions in the offseason. Much better than a year ago, and it's going to be I mean, the only place they can go is up after 4 wins.
Well, we thought that last year too.
Yeah.
It didn't happen. But I will be fascinating to see what they do in the draft. They've been talking about taking the best player available, not drafting for need. So I think that what they do at number 4 will be very interesting.
Would they ever take the kid from Colorado, the two-way player, Hunter?
It won't be available, will he?
Yeah, he's not going to be available.
Okay.
I think the Browns are going to take him. The question is if Abdul Carter drops, and there's been some talk about his stock dropping. Would they take Abdul Carter is the question. Again, there are some character concerns, supposedly.
As is the case of this show, actually.
Yeah, all three of us,
We've had
right?
plenty of character concerns. I just want to say one thing before we go. I just want to wish Alice Cook the best of luck this week.
Oh,
yeah.
Preparation for the
100%
marathon.
sure. God, she was a role model for me when I first started out, and even though she was in TV, I mean, being a woman pioneer in that role, she was a great source of inspiration for me then, and she is now as well in dealing what she's had to deal with, and pardon the pun, but putting her best foot forward under difficult circumstances. She's such an inspiration. People should root her on. I would, if anyone sees her, anyone's at the marathon, root her on if you see her going by.
Yeah, and if you haven't read Kevin Paul DuPont's story on Alice, it's worth the read. And I guarantee you won't make it through the whole thing without wiping a tear away from your eye. And there's about 2.5-minute video attached to the story. They went to her house and they went out on the road with her running. Yeah. And it's spectacular. You've got to see it and read it.
If anybody can do it, she can. So I just wish her the best. And you guys are great to even just say the things that you said. I know she appreciates it. I've been in touch with her last week a couple times. Not talking because she can't talk, but she does texting and AI. Pretty cool. Yeah. All right, you guys are great. Thank you. Great job, Karen. Thanks for being
thanks
with
so
us.
much.
Thanks for having me.
All right, and
I'll see you in the golf course,
trip
right?
to Tiger across country.
Pick up some tips. All right.
All right, Karen Guregian from MassLive.com has been our guest. We'll see you next week on UnAnchoredBoston.com.